Hey, welcome guys. I am back. We're in week 7, and this week we're starting in our Photoshop portion of the class, Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud. We'll be working in the textbook, Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud Revealed. It's by Elizabeth Eisner Redding, and we are going to start right in with the first chapter. And again, as with Illustrator, what's due at the end of each week would be the skills reviews, and then there will be 2 Photoshop projects as well that will be due this last half of the semester, and I will upload that, if not later today, probably the beginning of the week, Monday or Tuesday, to give you kind of a heads up as to what you'll be working on in this first project. But for right now, we are going to get started by activating Adobe Photoshop. Now, since I'm on a Mac, I'm going to go through the process of opening it on a Mac. If you're on a Windows environment, your PC, it will, the textbook takes you through Windows, I think 8, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps Windows 7 as well. So hopefully, if you need help with that, let me know. I'm just not able to demo it. Something important, particularly for Photoshop, are the hardware requirements, both for Windows as well as for a Mac. Primarily because it's such a hefty software, you may have difficulty running some of the exercises, doing the exercises if you don't have the appropriate hardware requirements. Remember, even if you don't have them at home and you don't have the software at home, you can always go into the graphics lab and the Stevenson Center at the college, and you will be able to access it and do your homework there. All right, but starting Photoshop on a Mac, I'm not even sure where they are here. I think that they are at the Launchpad icon here. So if you look up here, mine's kind of tiny. Here's the Launchpad, and if I click on that, you can do a quick search here by just putting in PH, and that will bring up only the software, obviously, that starts with a PH. Otherwise, and I don't do that very often, but you can also scroll through it by using your trackpad or your mouse just to scroll through to find the different softwares here. And again, we're going to click on Adobe Photoshop. I have 2015 downloaded. And this will, welcome screen will appear as you open the software. And quite honestly, they do have some nice little videos that will help you with some of the information. If you find you need some additional information that's not included either in the textbook or in my demos, feel free to go through and review some of those on your own. All right, now we are in Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to just briefly, you'll be familiar with the layout because a lot of what we've learned in Illustrator is also the same layout utilized in Photoshop. The panels are always here on the right-hand side. The tools are typically over here on the left-hand side, and then the control bar as well, or the options bar, as well as the menu items. Same place as you would find in Illustrator. Also the same are these workspace options. The fact that there are options available is the same. There are different options, but we can, I believe we probably will start out with essentials, so I'm just going to do a reset essentials, and you'll find that these are the panels that you work with most often. Layers, although we do work in layers in Illustrator, in Photoshop layers take on a much more significant a significant piece of our work process. You just have to have those up and available at all times in order to make sure that you're working on the correct layer and to add actually some of the options that you want to add or do some of the activities that you want to do with the layers available. The toolbox is different. This is a move tool rather than a selection tool. These are primarily the selection tools, and if you click and hold with this little down facing arrow, you'll see that, I wonder why I can't do that. There are other tools available underneath it. Actually, you can just go up here. What in the world? Okay, here's the rectangular, elliptical, single, and single column. This lasso tool is also a selection tool, more of a free-form selection tool. You also have a polygonal lasso and a magnetic lasso. That the polygonal does a little bit more square-sided selection, and the magnetic does based on contrast between pixels. Magic wand tool, I use that a lot. If you have large expanses of color, the same color, you can use the magic wand and the tolerance level to help you select what it is you want to select, and then the quick selection tool. Then here's the crop, the eyedropper. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, only from the standpoint that we get into the use of these later on, the brush. And you'll see that each time, as with Illustrator, each time I select a tool, the options change on the options bar based on what tool it is you have. All right, so we've activated Photoshop. We're going to go to File on the menu bar and click New. Or you can do a Command or Control N. We're going to double click the number in the width text box. And we're going to type in 500. We're going to click the width list arrow, then identify pixels as our selection or as our unit of measure. We're going to then double click the number in the height text box, and we're going to type in 400. And you're going to verify that the resolution is 72 pixels per inch. Now, we're not going into what the rest of these have right now, but understand when you're working in Photoshop with an image, quite typically, if you're working for online applications or online graphic design solutions, you're going to be working in the RGB color mode. But there is also CMYK and bitmap, grayscale, the same basic options that are available to you in Illustrator. I typically leave the background contents as transparent, although you can fill it with a background color right up front. All right, so we are going to click OK. And the gray document window background can be turned on by clicking Window on the menu bar and clicking Application Frame. That's what it looks like both off and on. All right. We're going to go down to the bottom of our document. I'm going to get it up here so you guys can actually see it. We're going to click that menu arrow on the status bar. And you want to make sure document sizes is checked if it's not already, like mine is already. All right, and here too are the system requirements for system hardware requirements for the Mac operating system. A lot of this information, if you just go under the Apple and go up to About This Mac, if you're working on a Mac, it will give you the information that you need. And then broadband internet connection is required for software activation if you're on the Creative Cloud membership option, which I am. And you'll see that up here. These are my Adobe and Creative Cloud software downloads. All right, so let's get this a little bit out of the way so we can move on to our next portion of this little exercise. Whoops, sorry. We're on lesson 2 now, and we're going to be working on opening and saving files. We just created a new document. Now we're going to work on opening and saving files. If I can get up here to where the exercises start. Hopefully you've read through this by now, so I'm just demoing really the exercise itself. Alright, so we are going to open a file using the menu bar. I'm going to go back over here. I'm just going to leave this untitled open. As you can see, when you open different documents in Photoshop, different file tabs will be added here so that you can walk back and forth or work back and forth between the different documents if you need to do so. So we're going to go to File on the menu bar, going to click Open. And we're going to navigate to the drive and folder where our data files are stored. And we're going to open Photoshop 1-1. And you want the file format to be PSD, which is a native file format for Photoshop. Alright, and now we are going to go to File on the menu bar again. This time we're going to browse in Bridge. Bridge is just basically it's just that, a file browser type of a software that Adobe introduced a few years ago. I noticed that they've not been spending as much time updating it and making changes to it. I used to use it quite a bit when I worked with digital imagery, and I still do use it if I'm working with Adobe Photoshop, but for most professional photographers use Lightroom rather than Bridge when working with their photos. But we're going to go in and introduce you to that anyway. So we're going to go to File on the menu bar, click on the down facing Browse in Bridge. And you'll see that it's opening now. It just takes a minute. Let me get this over so we can read our instructions as well. We're going to navigate through the hierarchical tree to the drive and folder where you store your Chapter 1 data files. So my data files then are on would be under Documents. I was just seeing if I have a folder here for the Muskegon Community College. No. I'm going to open up Documents. And then through Documents, I'm going to navigate to Muskegon Community College. There's got to be an easier way than this. Let's see what happens if we do MCC. No, that didn't work. All right, so we'll go back to this. And we're going to do an open. We're still not there yet, guys. Sorry. Under Muskegon Community College, we're looking for summer 2015 GR 270. And we're looking for Chapter 1 data files. And there we go. We're going to click, we want to make sure that sort by type, which is here. And then we want to click Essentials on the workspace, and we probably should have done that before we went right to the file, but of course I don't read. Hopefully you read your directions better than I do, and you want to make sure that Essentials is selected on the workplace switcher if it wasn't selected already, but it was. Now we're going to click the image of the butterfly, and we're going to drag the slider at the bottom of the bridge window a third of the way between the smaller thumbnail size and the larger one. So it's actually almost a third of the way already, but this is where they're talking about. See how much larger you can get it. Then we're going to click the image of the ox once. The ox. Seriously, would you have known that was an ox if that was another choice? Okay. And click the image of the ox once and compare your screen to figure 8, or mine on the screen, which is actually, if I made this a little larger so you could see it. And there you go. What's nice is when you click on the preview of the image, you get this information off to the side, which includes the metadata. It tells you what f-stop, what the shutter speed was, what your ISO was when it was shot, white balance. It gives you the overall file size information, and a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to get into right now, but it's great information in terms of how the image was taken, when it was taken, and so on and so forth. And it's metadata that's embedded. So it does, I would imagine, help with copyright issues if you took an image and someone worked to make that their own rather than have it as it should be, which is yours. You could, through metadata, probably prove some of your that the image was originally yours. Okay, so I digress. Let's take a look at what we're doing next in Chapter 1. We're going to double click on the image of the butterfly. And all of you guys know that I have difficulty with my double click, so I'm just going to do a Command 0 to open it. But what happens if your double click is working correctly, the butterfly opens in Photoshop and Bridge is no longer visible. So we are going to click the close button in the butterfly image file tab in Photoshop, which would be right here. All right, and I will be back in just a moment to demo either mini bridge or one of the other exercises in Chapter 1.